This is Greg Thomas, working with Don Blankenship's campaign for U.S. Senate. Certainly appreciate everybody calling or participating in our Tele-Town hall this evening. We have Mr. Blankenship on the line, and just so everybody knows before he gets going, just press *3 to ask any questions. So if you could just go ahead and press *3 if you have a question. But go ahead, Mr. Blankenship.
Okay, thank you, Greg. I join Greg in welcoming everyone to the call, and we appreciate your taking some time to be with us. As Republicans and conservatives, we are both worried and optimistic about our country, and I'll make just a couple of minutes of comments and then open for questions because that's the main purpose of the call. I think all of us are concerned about the outrageous government spending that never seems to stop and the ever-increasing debt. And we're, of course, concerned in West Virginia particularly about being last in jobs and first in drugs, and we're concerned about the illegal immigration, and the insanity is the only way to describe it, as well as being having a lot of crime, particularly in some of our small cities, and the fact that it's getting worse. And we're very concerned and feel shameful about being so impoverished in West Virginia that we most often are the worst in the nation. But again, at the same time, we believe that the election of Donald Trump and combining that with our having a more reasonable business environment in West Virginia, more favorable laws, and a more balanced Supreme Court, that we have a great opportunity, perhaps, in fact, a huge opportunity to make improvements. But on the other hand, our Senator Manchin, who most of us thought was a moderate Democrat, has, for whatever reason, fallen under the spell of Chuck Schumer. His votes are not representative of West Virginia's views, and perhaps the most out-of-touch vote that we've ever witnessed was the senator's vote on not approving or not being in favor of the tax cut. But again, this call is about answering your questions and explaining my views on the primary issues, or in fact on any issue that is on your mind and is important to you. So with that, we'll open up the call for your questions. Greg?
Yeah, just please remember to press *3 if you want to ask a question. We have a question from a David Tabb in Harper's Ferry. Go ahead there, David.
Yeah, this is David Tabb at Harper's Ferry. My question is that do you feel that the Constitution is alive and well, or is it dead, or needs to be resurrected? Due to the fact that I've been challenging my local county on my assessments for the last 10 years and have yet to have a day in court to present finding of facts and conclusion of law, all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court 11 times. And to date, I still haven't had a day in court. And do you feel that the people or the government needs to stand up and do their job and protect the people's constitutional right to due process?
Yeah, I think both the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution are in trouble, and it's in trouble in a lot of different ways. I mean, one of the reasons we have such a disparate educational system in West Virginia is we don't comply with the requirement that every child has the same opportunity for a quality education. On the U.S. level, of course, it's basically fallen apart, I think, as far as the courts paying attention to the Constitution, whether it be related to criminal law or whether it be related to many, many other issues. So I think our Constitution is in trouble, and I think we basically need to, go back and revisit it and see if we can't strengthen the requirements or the compliance with it. Greg?
Yeah, we have a Michael Morris from Cairo who's got a question about Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay. Michael?
Mike, Michael, we can't hear you very well there. I don't know if you can get a better spot or something, or.
You may have to go to another one, and if you got one, and then we'll come back to him.
All right. Mr. Blankenship, would you like to tell people your position on abortion and pro-life issues while we get another caller here?
Yeah, well, I'm extremely pro-life. I believe that we actually have, or children have, a right to more than just being born, though. They have a right to be born into a community and into a society that is drug-free and crime-free, and one in which they get loving care at home, and one in which they get a good education. So I think we, as adults in our generation, have failed the children, and both the ones that do get born and, of course, the ones that did not get born. I think we're having about 1 million abortions in the United States every year. And many of those, in fact, a high percentage of those are Planned Parenthood's work. And it's very unfortunate that Senator Manchin voted to, I think it was fund Planned Parenthood with $750 million just not long ago. And, of course, that money could be much better spent helping the homeless and the children that live in poverty in the country than it would be aborting children that have every right to be born.
Well, I appreciate that. We have a Mr. and Mrs. Vance in Mingo County. They have a question about infrastructure.
Yes, I was wondering about the, like, everywhere has cell service, a tower, and Mingo County doesn't have not one. And our road 2/2 in Marbone Creek, it was supposed to have been blacktopped years ago. I have paperwork on it, and it has not. We have no mail route, no bus route, and it's hard to get the kids in and out of school. And I agree with the abortion. I don't agree with no abortion. They shouldn't have abortions.
Yeah, as far as the area you're talking about in the roads, that's been a problem in West Virginia forever. Of course, we do have a unique problem with the hills, and the types of roads we have require more maintenance, and they're more expensive to build. But, we just haven't done the right things to attract business and have a larger tax base that affords us the opportunity to keep the roads in better condition. And as you probably know, a lot of the money gets wasted or taken away through corruption and so forth. So it's really unfortunate because, the kids travel longer distances now to get to school, that we've gone through the consolidations, and it's very important that they and all of us have safe roads to travel on.
All right, well, thanks, Don. We're going to go back to Michael Morris and see if he's gotten onto the line again here. He has a question about Medicare Medicaid.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I have a question about our Social Security and our Medicare. Is it going to be there for us down the road, and what can you do to ensure us that?
Well, I think the answers are both good and bad. I think we will find a way in the country. We'll have to find a way for it to be there. Although, if we don't do a better job on the debt than we're doing, it may be destroyed by inflation. The money we're getting may not be worth much. But the big thing that we may have to face, and we never like to see benefits change, but the people who are not grandfathered in, we may have to extend the years that you are eligible. Back when Social Security law was passed, probably the average lifespan was in the 60s, so people didn't live so long. But now that we're living longer, we may, at some point, for the people that haven't reached the Social Security age, extend it in order to make it sound for those of us that are already on it. And so I think it'll be there. I think there's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made. And I think that we need responsible people up there to make those decisions as soon as possible, because the sooner those decisions are made, the less egregious they'll have to be. So, if we move the retirement age out a little bit and get the debt under control, I think it'll be there. So I'm optimistic about that, but I do think we're going to have to make some adjustments because the average lifespan is approaching 80 years now, and it's hard to get benefits for that long for that many people.
All right. For anybody else that wants to ask a question, please remember to press *3 if you want to ask a question. That's *3 to ask a question. Next, we have Sharon from Hedgesville, who has a question about cleaning house in politics.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can, Sharon.
Yes, sir. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for taking on this task. You're walking into a shark tank, and I just want to know that you back the President, the Marines, and the Constitution of the United States to clean house because, sir, as soon as your back is turned, they'll have knives drawn.
Yeah, it's been a problem. We send people to Washington that make that promise to do what's necessary to balance the budget and uphold the Constitution. And once they get there, they seem to catch the same disease that the rest of them have. I can assure you that won't happen with me because I don't intend to make a career out of being a politician. I've lived a good life. I think I understand the issues and what you are concerned about. And I've been dealing with criticisms and opposing views and knives, as you call them, and sharks for a long, long time. So I'm angry. I sense some in your voice that you're angry. I think they're destroying our country, and they're destroying it in so many different ways that, it's hard to keep up, whether it's illegal immigration, excessive spending, failure to be physically responsible about the money, failure to uphold the Constitution, and it just seems like the elite far left has taken over our country, and it's got to stop. So I can assure you when I get there, I won't be taking any prisoners or being unwilling to stand when Schumer's looking at me. I'll be as strong as anyone there.
All right, thanks. We have a question from Shelley in Wheeling on immigration.
Yes.
Yes,
Hi, Mr.
go ahead,
Blankenship.
Shelley. Hi, Shelley. How are you?
I'm doing well. My question is on immigration and specifically with building the wall. What is your views on that?
Well, I think we should build the wall, in one answer. I have no idea about whether the remote areas that they talk so much about on television are best guarded with a wall or whether they're already guarded by the terrain or the technology. But at the end of the day, there shouldn't be anybody able to enter the United States that we don't want to enter or is not legally entering. And it's not just the Mexican border, it's the waterways and anywhere else that they might try to get into the country. Very concerned about the bill that Senator Manchin is currently sponsoring, which allows immigrants that come in the country before June of this year to remain in the country or at least have low priority as far as law enforcement. I don't understand how Senator Manchin has lost touch with us and doesn't realize that immigration and illegal immigration are important issues to West Virginia. He said the other day there were not issues in West Virginia, but if he thinks that, he must not have been to Huntington and other places where the drugs are running rampant and continue to flood in across the Mexican border because it's so easy to get across. And the sanctuary cities are providing safe havens for illegal immigrants, and that simply has to stop as well. So there's a lot needs to be done, the wall being one part, somehow overcoming the sanctuary cities, as well as much stricter enforcement and less ambiguity in the law.
Next, we have Angela in Williamstown, who has a question about retraining coal mines.
Hello.
Hi, how are you, Angela?
I'm okay. How are you?
Pretty good.
Hey, I want to know what you think about coal, because West Virginia is more than coal. And we need to teach our coal miners to do other stuff and stop killing themselves in those mines and breathing in that dust. And I wondered if you could think of some other industry that we could bring in here and retrain them.
Yeah, well, that's you're right on subject with one of my most basic messages, which is that West Virginia has natural resources, transportation with rivers, and we have a quite extensive rail system because of the coal industry needed it for the last 100 years. So we have a lot of opportunity to find businesses that would locate in West Virginia that are something other than coal. Most people out there in the public don't know that I was on the board of the largest construction company in the world, and I was on the board of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other boards, and so I understand how companies make the decision to site or place their businesses in various locations or states. And now that we have a more moderate Supreme Court and we have a legislature that's passed right to work and other pro-business laws, there's no reason we can't attract any kind of business that North Carolina or any other state has attracted. You might be interested to know that while we've been dropping population over the last 30 years or so, that North Carolina has increased their population by 2.7 million people because they've created an environment that attracts businesses. And we also need to learn that there's a connection of two dots there. You've got to have businesses to have good jobs. As far as coal miners, I mean, we're going to need a lot of coal miners in West Virginia to help fuel the Trump infrastructure program, I suspect, and we need to do a couple of things there. First thing we need to do is break MSHA in two pieces so that they don't both regulate the mines and then investigate the accidents. So the aviation industry has a tremendously successful safety record because the Federal Aviation Administration regulates and the National Transportation Safety Board investigates, and that leads to much more improvement in the safety issues or in safety itself than a system where the regulators can simply cover up whatever participation or cause that they had in the accident. So I think you're right on subject. I think it's, places like Parkersburg and Huntington and Beckley and I suspect Wheeling have suffered too much from bad West Virginia laws and from government behavior in D.C. that's anti-business as well. And once we fix that, there's no reason we can't have any type of industry that any other state has.
So, all right, we have Linda Browning from Danville with a question for you, Mr. Blankenship.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Blankenship.
Hi.
Yes, sir. I would like to say, first off, I am a coal miner's daughter. I understand that there's a lot of bitterness toward you and people that you've been associated with in southern West Virginia, but I also want to say this, that I believe had other things been done, you may not have got such a bad end of the stick, but I didn't even want to talk about that. What I want to know is how that I can go about here in Boone County, because I know everybody and their brother here, how I can go about trying to help ensure that you win solidly against Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin has done nothing except cut the West Virginia coal miners' throats. The only time I ever seen Joe Manchin smiling was whenever he was rubbing elbows with the Washington elite, and I, for one, am sick to death of that. And, sir, I would like to know if you want me and friends of mine to work for you, because we will. I want to see you get in there simply because I want Joe Manchin stomped. I just want him more.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, Joe, as I said earlier, has totally lost touch with West Virginians, and he does need to go. As far as our campaign and my personal campaign, we get through the primary first, but I can assure you that we will do everything we can to defeat Joe Manchin. And as far as you helping us out, if you call in or get in contact with us, Greg, who's been on the phone with us during this call, will find you something that you can do for us, because we certainly can always use people on the ground. And Greg, I don't know if you have a way to contact her or something that you have that she can get in touch with you or not.
Yeah, no, we can get in touch with folks after this. And also, if anybody would like to contact us or have us get on our list and everything, you can actually press *0, email, and we can get your information there. For those of you just wanting to ask questions, again, it's *3. So *3 asks a question, and *0 helps you get an email. Next, Mr. Blankenship, we have Tim Clark from East Bank with a question.
Tim. Are you there, Tim?
Yes, Mr. Blankenship.
Ah.
The previous woman basically asked you what I wanted to ask you, but I was just wanted to make sure that you was a supporter of Donald Trump and that you was a firm believer in the Bible and the God of the Bible to keep these Muslims out of West Virginia, and to you get my point there, and the immigration, they're taking over all of our jobs, and you can't go to a store and buy anything because they don't know what you're talking about, and they can't understand you. And I do want to help maybe support your campaign and do some things and influence others to get rid of Joe Manchin. He cut my throat and my livelihood and my career from $100,000 a year to nothing. And
yeah, you're right. Mr. Manchin has cut all of us back, and I agree with you on the illegal immigration. And of course, it is true that we're moving more and more away from Christian beliefs and so forth, and some of the things that they debate on TV about boys going to girls' bathrooms and so forth. It's just not even understandable. So whether it be illegal immigration or whether it be Joe Manchin or whether it be supporting Donald Trump, we're entirely on the same page. I think Donald Trump is our greatest opportunity to finally make a difference in the United States and in West Virginia. And I am very much in line with his beliefs and policies, and I believe that I can not only support him, I believe I can help him find new ideas to improve the country and get us back on the right track.
All right, Mr. Blankenship, we have Peggy in Morgantown with a question about government pensions.
Peggy?
Yes, I have a question for you. And now this is a federal question, but I also have a state question when I'm done. But the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision for federal retirees, is there any way that we can work to get that eliminated so that federal employees that retire and are making less than $60,000 a year in retirement, that they can eliminate those penalties? I mean, I understand that was given for people who made a lot more money than the people that are retired right now from the federal government. This is done especially with the postal employees. You know, old-time postal employees didn't make very much, and we actually delivered the mail.
Yeah, I'm sure you did, and I don't. Let me admit up front, I'm not familiar with the details of those offsets, but with the inflation that we've had and other problems we've had, and how the other things that have been done to our jobs and so forth, I would certainly hope that we can take care of people that work for the Postal Service or whatever. So that's the problem we have. We're too busy giving money to Iran and Iraq and policing the world and spending money on everything that these guys can dream up, and giving money to their family members to put in solar panel businesses. We're wasting so much money that there's not money that's needed for true causes. I mean, we should be embarrassed and ashamed that we have 11 million children living in poverty and 500,000 people living on the streets that don't even have a home, and yet we are able to, if you will, police the world and do other things of that nature. So I would think that something of the nature you're talking about should be fixable.
So, Mr. Blankenship, now we have a Lou Hamrick from Morgantown.
Hey, Lou.
Hello, Mr. Blankenship. How are you this evening?
I'm fine. How are you in Morgantown?
Well, we're warming up, thank you. My question is more of a statement, and it is that you're not very well known in this part of the state, and we would encourage you to rally your base up here, which you do have. There are a lot of people, and the folks that I talk to, I haven't had any negative feedback on anyone I've talked to about Don Blankenship. The people who have a negative opinion of you don't understand the situation or the conditions you went through. There was an article in the paper up here, which I'm sure you read a while back. The guy was absolutely stupid that wrote it. So what I would encourage you to do or ask you to do is to let the people in this part of the state get yourself a base up in here so that the word that I've agreed with the things that you've said about giving money to other countries that don't support us when we need it. Those are the kind of things that I think play well to your fellow West Virginians. And I did find out when I was waiting for your call that there's going to be a town hall meeting here in Morgantown, which when I find out where it is, I'll plan to be there, and I'll bring some of my friends. So really, I won't take time up from someone else, but I just wanted to encourage you to get known in this part of the state.
Yeah, we intend to do that, Lou, and I really appreciate it. I know that you have a small business there in Morgantown, and I know that you're interested in that. And I think we're scheduled, Greg, to be there around the 1st of March. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, sir. I actually think it is going to be on March 1st. We're going to be in Morgantown, and we'll get information about that real soon.
Yeah, we will be getting the word out on the details. I don't know if you know yet where it'll be, but we will be there, and we'll be both making a presentation and listening to what people say. And we're doing a whole lot of other things, Lou, that might get us better known in that part of the country. You'll see a lot of advertisements the next few weeks, and you'll also see us visiting other towns in that general area. So we're going to be working hard at getting very well known and letting people know who Don Blankenship really is and what we believe, which I believe that what we believe is entirely consistent with the great majority of West Virginians. And I appreciate you calling in.
All right, next we have Michael Church from Welch has a question about economic development.
Hello, sir. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
We live in McDowell County. You're very familiar with the coal fields down here and the politics down here. We have an abundance of natural resources in this state, both in southern West Virginia and northern West Virginia. But we don't have an economic development board that understands what economic development is. We all want jobs to come here and things of that nature, but we can't get the people that are in charge in Charleston and in the federal level as well to understand that we can't attract jobs here unless we are able to get people who understand what it takes to do that. Like you were talking about the national economic development boards. My question to you is, how would you address that situation for all of the state?
I think the problem.
And how would you?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. You go ahead.
And how would we go about to fix that situation? How would we go about implementing that policy?
Okay. Well, first thing is that business people are always looking for the best site in terms of what their costs are going to be, and they're looking for sites that their executives or their managers or whatever places that people want to live. So we have some problems in that we've not created a situation in West Virginia where we have a quality of life, and certainly being first in drug abuse deaths is not helping us and so forth. So I realize that's a long-term thing and not a specific to McDowell County issue, but we have to create a state that people want to live in terms of personal income taxes, in terms of education, in terms of drug abuse being lower, and in terms of having things to do, and that itself will create some jobs. Now, as I said at the opening, we've done a much better job now that we have a balanced Supreme Court, so to speak, or at least nearly balanced, and we have a right to work bill, and we're making and should make other changes. Once you have an environment or a state or a place that people want to move to and don't feel like they're going to get sued and blasted in the media every morning because they're operating a business in West Virginia, then it's a matter of going out just like you were looking for an employee and finding companies and bringing them in to look and selling them on what the state has to offer or the area has to offer. And that can be done. I mean, as I said earlier as well, the railroad system, the rivers, the huge amounts of electricity capacity that we have, and the relatively inexpensive electricity compared to other countries, or other states, I should say, which is something that businesses are often focused on, particularly manufacturing businesses that use a tremendous number of kilowatt hours. So it's a matter of talking like a businessman, being a businessman, and not trying to hoodwink them, to use a word I'm sure that's understood in McDowell County, that because you're not going to hoodwink executives of businesses. You're going to have to actually have a place they want to come to and a reason that they want to come there. And when they do get there, they don't want to get up every morning and read something that they're horrible people, because generally speaking, they're going to go somewhere where they're treated better. So there's a lot to be done because we have a bad reputation, but we certainly can improve that reputation rapidly if we send a businessman to Washington, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running so hard to be your senator.
All right, next we have Joan from Bancroft with a question about guns.
Joan?
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Go win. Win for me. Win for this state.
Yeah, we're going to do everything we can, that's for sure.
I know you can do it. I know you can. Just get the people behind you. You're a great man. You've done nothing wrong. And I will do anything I can for you.
We appreciate that.
Well, that might be a good time for us to say that you can visit, for those of you that want to know more about Mr. Blankenship and more about the campaign, go to the website, vote.donblankenship.com. And also, you can press *0 right now and give us your email, and we will be sure to get in touch with you. Next, we have Connie from Kaiser, who has a question about that will include Donald Trump.
Hello.
Hey, Con. How are you?
I'm fine. Mr. Blankenship, what will you do once you get elected as the senator of West Virginia and take Joe Manchin out? What will you do to help Mr. Trump and them put Hillary Clinton and all the crooked ones there in Washington in jail?
But,
if we did something like that, we'd already be in jail. She's no bit better than we are. None of them down there.
Yeah, Hillary is certainly deserving of a lot of scrutiny and perhaps going to jail. She's I don't know. I think her and the Clintons and the whole clique in D.C. Forgot that they are American citizens and they should be held to the same standards that the rest of us are held to. And she, if the Uranium One deal is correct, or all this stuff about, the spies writing stories about the president, she certainly needs to be dealt with. I do think that the problem is well beyond the Clintons, though. It's amazing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't seem like it matters which of the politicians it is. They all seem to get up there and think that the money is theirs and that they can dole it out to their family or spend it in huge amounts in their state and steal part of it and so forth. And somehow that's got to get stopped. The generic statement or the broad statement is that the government and the government leaders need to be held to the same standards that they have imposed on business leaders. The business leaders have audits, they have reports that they have to generate quarterly, they have to be transparent in terms of their business dealings, and they have the Security and Exchange Commission and the IRS and everybody overseeing what they're doing. The problem we've got in D.C. is Hillary and others are able to do criminal things and nothing can be done. And one little thing you might not know is even if they slander you, you can't really sue them because the government stands in for them and defends them. So when you want to be critical of them, you have to be careful, but they can say whatever they want about us. And certainly I would vote for that being changed.
All right, next we have Judith Mason in New Martinsville who has a question about term limits.
Mr. Blankenship.
Yes, ma'am.
What is your stance on term limits, and what can the American people do to have politicians receive the same Social Security and insurance that we receive?
Well, on term limits, I'd be very much in favor of. The founders of the country, they got a lot right. I mean, I guess if they were taking a test, they probably got 92% as far as a grade, certainly an A. But term limits for representatives did not cross their mind, apparently, and it should have. I guess at that time, people would go to D.C. and spend a few weeks or a few months and go back home, and they had regular jobs, so nobody ever thought that these jobs would become, career jobs, and nobody would ever leave D.C. if they could find a way to get reelected. So I'm very much in favor of it. I think it would change the behavior of the politicians to a great extent. And as far as Social Security and so forth, I think it ought to just be the law. If necessary, if we could get a constitutional amendment, whether it be term limits or that the Congress has to be under the same laws as the rest of the American people. If they pass a law, they have to comply with it themselves. So there are a few constitutional amendments that we need probably to put teeth in those things, and unfortunately the founders missed some of them, and we've been very remiss as a society and as a country of not upgrading the Constitution as the years roll by and as problems such as corruption and so forth came to light.
All right, next we have Marvin Cochran from Sandrock with a question about Southern West Virginia.
Yes, hello?
Hey, Marvin, how are you?
Doing good. I'm a 40-year coal miner, Wyoming County, West Virginia, retired. And what's your plan to bring West Virginia up from last place to whatever?
Yeah, I think the plan would have several parts. One thing, as far as coal goes, if President Trump does in fact do a $1.5 trillion infrastructure project, it's going to take a lot of resources to do that. And I think the coal industry can benefit. As one of the ladies earlier asked, we got to make sure that coal miners are kept healthy and safe, and I threw out the breaking up of MSHA as being one of those things. So we shouldn't abandon coal mining, because it is something that we have that gives us a unique opportunity. But at the same time, we've got to create an atmosphere where companies want to come here and that they want to, if you will, stay here and live here and enjoy what West Virginia has to offer. And so I think we got to market West Virginia not just to tourists but to businesses, and we got to get mining going a little bit. And to give you one idea, I'm a numbers guy, just so you'll understand the magnitude of the opportunity we're missing. The Chinese have a smaller economy than we have, and they produce 800 million tons of steel per year, which requires a huge amount of coal. They're now producing 6 times as much coal as we are. But we're only producing 80 million tons of steel. And, of course, President Trump's already noticed that and is looking at the trade laws and whether we can impose some taxes on steel and so forth to increase the amount of steel that's produced in the U.S. But basically what we need to build a steel mill in Charleston or somewhere and feed it with West Virginia coal and take that steel and help Trump create better roads and better bridges, and then at the same time attract other business to West Virginia, whether they be making computer chips or whether they be making gasoline or glass or whatever. So we need to join the mainstream of the U.S. economy that President Trump is going to create.
All right, next we have Tyler from Charleston with a question about drugs.
Mr. Blankenship, if you were to get elected, what would you do in Washington to combat the opioid addiction in West Virginia and all the problems associated with it, like how the big farmers are bringing in too many drugs and all the problems associated with it?
Yeah, I'm sure I would come up with more ideas once I got there and got into more information than I have, but there are a number of things that need to be done, some of which would be very unpopular in D.C. One is we need to drug test everybody that's in a leadership position in D.C. and the judges and the people that are in these organizations, DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency or whatever. We need to make sure we don't have drug dealers trying to deal with drugs and or drug users as well. There's no excuse for the pharmacy companies not knowing where their drugs are going. I've learned so far that many of these drugs pass through secondary and tertiary brokers and handlers and inventoriers and warehouses and find themselves, showing up in, say, a handful of drug stores that are selling astronomical numbers of drugs, and there's no reason that a pharmacy company that can keep track of all of its money and keep track of its employees and pay its taxes and so forth can't keep track of where its drugs are going. So I think that, as well as what we mentioned earlier on the illegal drugs of closing the walls and sitting down on the sanctuary cities, would make a tremendous difference. And of course, the other element of it is the drug enforcement people, the local communities need more officers and more people out there on the streets dealing with the problem. And when we do find people who are pushing drugs, they need to be locked up for a long time.
All right, next we have James Cooper from Parkersburg with a question about natural resources.
Mr. Blankenship?
How are you?
Good. The question on natural resources. Natural resources has left the state of West Virginia for 150 years with very little income and long-term benefits to the average West Virginian. Now we have a problem with natural gas leaving this state a couple billion cubic feet per day, going south, going north into Canada. I want to know what your position is. And by the way, they're using eminent domain to take people's gas and land. I think it's time that the natural resources that is leaving this state does not leave this state. You want to use our natural resources, you put your factories here, okay? Yeah. And I would like to make a comment about the Manchin family. I'm totally opposed to it. I'm a lifelong conservative. You mentioned the drug problem. Nobody has mentioned so far of Joe Manchin's daughter being chairman of Mylan Pharmaceuticals, which just paid a $465 million fine. Yeah? They don't really realize just what kind of compromise the Manchin family is. Anyone that could support a Manchin is just completely, I just don't have words for it. But address the question about the natural resources and the techniques and so forth that's being used to take that out of the state of West Virginia. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Your comments and question are very much on target with what everybody's been asking about, whether it's creating jobs in McDowell County or recovering the quality of life in Huntington or in Charleston. It's been a problem in West Virginia for years that we export resources instead of exporting products. Many countries have figured out this problem. In fact, in some countries, they won't even export their coal because they know that the coal is what makes the steel, and the steel is what makes the cars, and that they get not only the jobs that are created by turning timber into furniture, for example, they also get the tax base, and the tax base feeds law enforcement and community projects and schools, and so it all fits together. You have to have a larger tax base in order to be able to provide the things that other businesses would want to have. So sometimes we're sort of in a catch-22. We can't get off the ground because we don't have the broad tax base, and we can't create the broad tax base until we get off the ground. So that's been the challenge, but you're exactly right. We should be selling, again, the easiest one to understand is furniture instead of timber, and we should be selling steel or cars instead of coal, and we should be selling chemicals instead of natural gas, and we were. But unfortunately, the laws and the media, to a great extent, discouraged Dow Chemical and others that were in Charleston, and even bankrupted the Charleston Gazette finally for because they drove so many jobs out of town. Going to the Manchins, I bothered to watch the entire 3-hour or so testimony of Manchin's daughter, on television, on the recording, and I understand a lot about corporate income and so forth and how that works because I've been in it for a long time, but the price increase on EpiPen seemed, even to me as a businessman, to be way out of line. And the Manchin connection to Mylan should be of concern to all of us who are concerned about the drug problem in West Virginia. I don't have any particular knowledge of Mylan or anything negative to say about their involvement, but certainly the drug companies, whether it be Mylan or whether it be any of the other ones, Glaxo, whoever, Pfizer, they have to take the lead on fixing the legal drug problem. And I have learned that a big part of the drug problem was caused by the requirement, so to speak, or the encouragement of doctors to treat pain as an illness rather than a symptom of an illness. So they were encouraged and pushed to prescribe drug pain pills in order to alleviate pain, when in the past they would have let the person live with a little more pain and perhaps use a less addictive and a less strong drug. But what happened, we addicted thousands and thousands of people with legal drugs, and then can't get them off of them, so they have to go out later on and acquire illegal drugs, which creates illegal drug trafficking and all sorts of problems. So it all fits together. The drug companies are going to have to step up and deal with it as well as the government. And because we lost, I think it was 8,000 people in West Virginia last year to drug abuse. At least it was the highest in the nation per capita per 100,000 people, and the number in the United States is up in the 40,000 range. So between cars, problems with traffic and cars and bad roads and bridges and drugs, we're killing about 80,000 of our citizens per year. So got to stop.
Next, we have Thomas Rickman in Union.
Mr. Blankenship.
Yes, sir.
It's great to talk to you. You've not been treated fairly as a businessman, and I'm glad you're stepping forward to help this country.
Thank you.
I know you understand business, and you're conservative, and you know how to make things happen. And I think you'd be a great asset to this state and this country.
Thanks again.
I've been listening for a half an hour, and you've answered a lot of questions. I have no doubt in my mind that you're thinking along the path of most hardworking West Virginians and Americans. So I'm going to be behind you, and I pray for the best for you, and looking forward to you being a senator for this state.
I appreciate that. I can tell you that I began working in the coal mines when I was 19 and was saying it the West Virginia way. I was raised in a family business, and so we were used to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week since I could remember. So that's what we believed in, and that's how we fed ourselves. And I believe in people working hard, but I believe in them being given the opportunity to work hard. And as far as how I've been treated, it's been a remarkable journey. You know, the state was in dire situation in the early 80s, particularly in Mingo County and so forth. We were about like we have been for the last 3 years. And when I returned home after 10 years in Georgia and Colorado and so forth, I was determined to make a difference in Mingo County, and we cut the unemployment in half and created hundreds of jobs there, and it led to Massey basically becoming the largest coal company in West Virginia. And we created a lot of good jobs and worked very hard at it. And I very much appreciate the people that worked for us and feel badly about how abused they were, if you will, by the government. And so I'm also very interested in making sure that the federal government treats American business as well. One quick thought on that while people are listening. When most people think that when you're listed on the New York Stock Exchange or a company's stock is listed there, that they are American companies, and don't realize that a lot of the companies that they might buy stock in or their pension fund might buy stock in are actually foreign companies. And one of the things I believe that we should have is we should have the ability to know how many of the employees and how much of the taxes they're paying and how much of the capital spending they're doing is American versus non-American, so that we can include in their reflections on what to invest in, whether we're investing in an American company or whether we're investing in a Chinese company. And so I think that one of the changes that needs to be made is these companies need to report in such a manner that we can tell who they really are.
All right, we're getting down close to the end here, but we definitely still have some more questions. But we'll take at least one or two more. We have Christine from Brewston Mills.
Hi, Christine.
Hi, Mr. Blankenship. I have a question. I'm 55 years old, and I do take part in social media. And I see a lot of people complaining, whether they're on the left or the right. They complain about a lot of issues on Facebook and Twitter and all these different venues. And I wonder, what is the best way for people to reach their senators and Congress people, you know, to get their message across and to tell you, what do we want from you? What do we want you to do? Is it through calling the switchboard at the office, or is it through emailing or writing letters? What's the best way for the American people to get their point across to you?
Well, first of all, I've had that same problem. It seems like they're not very available or very accessible, and of course that needs to be improved. But I think, and Greg, who's on here with me, has a lot of experience trying to influence legislators. But a lot of times at the federal level, going to their local office, for example, when I had a list of safety enhancements I needed to make, I couldn't get any reaction out of D.C. For the mining business, so I went down to Senator Manchin's office and hand-delivered it. And sometimes I think you're going to have to do that. But many times they're getting your message, they just don't pay any attention to it. That's and you don't know whether they got it or not. And of course, they're able to use the anthrax problem we had at one point as to not getting the mail directly to them, and you don't know whether they're getting your emails. But Greg might have other suggestions, but I would recommend a lot of times just taking it to their office and handing it to their staff. But Greg?
All right, we have one last caller here, Timmy from Elkview.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very fine. You know, I served in the Army for 3 years active duty back in the 80s, and I love my country, and I love this state. And, sir, I just want to know, are you pro-life? And my second question is, in the face of great opposition, would you still stand against abortion?
Yeah, you can count on me for pro-life. I've donated thousands and thousands of dollars personally to, Right to Life. And I know them personally at the national level and talk to them sometimes. And I've even talked to them about adding that extra word, right to a life. As I mentioned earlier, we need not only to make sure that every child is born, but he also is born into a country and an area where he can prosper and have a good life. So you won't have any doubt about my loyalty to the pro-life movement.
Well, I certainly, this is Greg again, I certainly apologize to everybody that had questions that we didn't get to. We're coming up on the end of the hour-long Tele-Town hall. Just for everybody, if you press *0, you can give your email address and stay in touch with the campaign. Also, feel free to give us a call at 304-720-5498. And Mr. Blankenship, if you want to take the last couple minutes to close here.
Well, again, I just want to thank everybody for being on here. And the last question, or the next to last question about the inaccessibility of our representatives is a very frustrating problem for a lot of Americans and a lot of West Virginians. I have spoken a great deal about the fact that I'm 100% West Virginian. The media sometimes tries to make it out like I'm not, but I know West Virginia, and I've lived here most all of my life, and the only time I was gone was when I had to go like so many other people do because they couldn't find a job. So, I'm going to do everything I can to help West Virginia, and I think that we have a great opportunity, and if we all work together, we can have a state that we can be proud of. So I too, again, appreciate you being on the call. And we'll do this again. So we look forward to some of you that weren't able to get your question in to get it in next time. Thank you.